Hello, welcome to The Rational Live. It is November 13th, 2020. I'm your host, David Dole. Got a big show today, post-election show. In fact, the stories that I have prepped for you, I would normally do this kind of prepping for individual segments that I don't shoot live, as there is a lot of content to each of these stories. But before I even get to a preview of what's coming up, rationalnational.com, therationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page, help support the show. You can also hit join under the video here on YouTube to join on YouTube. Hit subscribe, that's free. Make sure you're subbed to the show. Also hit the like button, that helps with the algorithm. And yeah, it's been a week. A lot's been happening, and I'm gonna give you a little preview right now. As well, of course, throughout the show, I'll take your super chats, and I'll take the bulk of them at the end, but I'll take them between stories as well. So first story that's up, I'm going to get to Trump being humiliated or feeling humiliated. Going to discuss a police union that is hurt by AOC's facts. Also, Trump's narcissism and how it's infected people that are hired to protect his life. Also, a Canadian story on the grocery chain Loblaws and how they have record profits while continuing to underpay their employees. And Rand Paul, good old Rand Paul, pushing a false COVID-19 narrative. I'll get to that. And another AOC story, just showing you how she's taken the gloves off since the election, which is a good sign for the future. But first up here, let me start with this first story. So Donald Trump is apparently humiliated that he lost the election, which is why he's been in hiding for 8 days. So before I get any deeper into this, let me play this clip from CNN's John Harwood. And for those watching live, let me make sure I can that the audio is good for you, because you know it's always a problem.
CNN's John Harwood, he is at the White House for more. It's been days, John, since we've seen the president. It has, and it's really an extraordinary situation that's unfolding here, Jim. First of all, the president is humiliated by this outcome. He understands that he's lost the election, but he does not want to face that music publicly, so he's been hiding out in the White House, hasn't been talking before cameras as he typically does every day for a week now. Second thing he's trying to do is turn this situation to his advantage. So he's throwing up these bogus lawsuits, which aren't going anywhere, that are getting tossed out of court as fast as he files them, to try to string this out. He's fundraising for his political action committee as well as his legal defense fund. And he's trying to create a cause, a sense of grievance going forward, so he'll have something to rally his supporters around. As a matter of fact, the New York Times is reporting that when he finally accepts reality that he's going to be leaving, he may announce a 2024 presidential bid at the same time, which would allow him to say, well, maybe I kind of sort of lost, but really the campaign's just going on and it'll culminate in 4 years. The one thing the president is not doing is taking control of the effort to stop this pandemic. He does not seem to be interested in actually being president at this moment. He does have on his schedule today the first coronavirus-related piece of government business, which is a meeting about Operation Warp Speed. That's about the vaccine. He's not trying to stop the actual spread of the pandemic. He's always invested his hopes in the vaccine. As you mentioned, his Republican support is beginning to crack around the edges about things like getting intelligence briefings, but the Republican Party, which is so scared of the president and wants his support in these Georgia runoffs, is not forcing him to do anything more aggressive on the pandemic itself as these cases and hospitalizations and deaths continue to rise, Jim.
All right. Now, as usual, of course, this is all about Donald Trump. He's feeling humiliated, hasn't spoken in 8 days, hasn't been doing any work at all. He's been golfing, though. We've seen that. Because he's the quintessential narcissist. He always plays the victim. It amazes me that anybody finds strength in this man. He is so incredibly weak. What an actual leader would do after they lose an election is first concede, admit they lost, and then work as hard as they can in these last couple months to try and maybe stop a pandemic or limit the damage that this pandemic is doing to millions of lives. But you are seeing skyrocketing cases of COVID-19, and Trump is doing absolutely nothing to stop it. Now, what he is doing, though, is raising money, trying to stay relevant by raising money for his election fraud defense fund, whatever the hell he's calling it, where if you look into the fine print, as I've done this in other videos, you look at the fine print of where that money goes. 60% of it goes to his new PAC. It's not going to fight election fraud. It's going to his new PAC, a PAC that will be used to back Republican politicians, which is why you're seeing a lot of GOP senators, not a lot, the vast majority of them, of members of the GOP, not coming out and acknowledging that Joe Biden has won the election, that Trump has lost, because they want a piece of that money. He's going to attempt to continue having influence over this party and even potentially run in 2024, which also means that Joe Biden, whatever Joe Biden does, it has to be transformational. Joe Biden has to show people that there is a clear difference between the last 4 years of Donald Trump and the first 4 years of Joe Biden. If there isn't a clear difference, if Joe Biden and his administration don't offer real help to people, then we may be looking at Donald Trump, President Donald Trump in 2024. So this is why you can't just hope that Joe Biden does well, but you have to be actively engaged. Whether that's through, local groups, whether it's through running yourself, whether it's, being engaged in activism, maybe being a part of a march on Washington for something like Medicare for All is an idea that's floating around. But be a part of the movement that is necessary to actually push for any real change. Because if that doesn't happen, I am actually afraid that Donald Trump could come back and win again. So there has to be some real push for change here. And ultimately, though, this comes down to, once again, Trump being the ultimate narcissist. All right. Put your chats on screen here. I'm already hearing some super chats come in. Get to the next story in a minute. Biden wins Georgia? Are you fooling me? Let me look this up. Even though I got to be honest, I've barely been keeping track of the election since. Yeah, he did. Look at that. I've been prepping this show for 3 hours. So I missed this story that came out 30 minutes ago. Joe Biden becomes first Democrat in 28 years. I'll put this up. That should have been the headline of this live stream. Joe Biden, first Democrat in 28 years to win Georgia. How about that? There you go. So this is the former vice president is the first Democratic nominee to triumph in Georgia since Bill Clinton in 1992. And this is because of the Get Out the Vote effort in Georgia, partly led by Stacey Abrams. This is not because the Democratic Party, invested in the right area. No, the Democratic Party didn't do shit. Actual activist movements on the ground, they're the ones that got people registered, got them out to vote, and ultimately led to Joe Biden winning Georgia here. So awesome win. Again, every state that Joe Biden takes makes it tougher and tougher and tougher for Donald Trump to try and steal the election. This idea of him putting up a new slate of electors, which has been floated, in states like Pennsylvania. If Biden's winning all the other states, Trump can't do anything. And anyways, I'm confident that Trump's not going to be able to steal the election. I don't think he'll ever concede. But I think at some point he's going to have to realize he's going to leave the White House, and he'll either be escorted out, or at some point before then he'll say something like, "Oh well, it was fraud, but they stole the election, but I got to leave now." Like he'll never actually admit defeat. So, but apart from Trump, he will be escorted out, and Joe Biden will take the White House at the end of January, and I'm looking forward to that fight of neoliberalism versus the working class. Let me grab some chats here. Wow, a lot of chats coming in. All right. And I think it's already cutting some of them off. So, gotta open my page. Also, if you're new to the stream, I'm the only person here. So occasionally there are dips in the action as I prep stories or search for my Super Chats page. All right. Greg Nan says Doug Ford is such a tryhard. He's becoming the mini version of Trump despite Ontario's new color code. Yeah. Right now, Ontario is sitting on a bunch of money that they could be using towards fighting COVID-19, and they're refusing to spend it for whatever reason. Adam Bryceland says, so David, I'm so tired of Jimmy Dore attacking AOC and the squad. They literally get death threats on a daily basis. He needs to cut them some slack. Honestly, I haven't watched Jimmy Dore for a while. I have noticed he's gone down a certain path that I don't agree with, but look, I don't watch him enough to really comment. That said, yeah, I don't think when you're looking at a complete failure of Donald Trump and a complete failure of Democratic Party establishment, I just think there's better ways or better people to be attacking right now. But of course, look, if AOC and the squad say something wrong, or they don't push for the change necessary, then yes, they deserve criticism. But it just seems like odd timing right now. But again, I haven't watched the content, so I have no idea. I Shoot You says, is it easier to get into Canada if you're born in the U.S. or from Mexico but live in the U.S.? Asking for a friend. People ask me immigration questions all the time. I'm sorry, I don't know. I guess I could, research this more. But you could probably find this information just by searching on Google. Honestly, I don't know. I do know that it isn't that easy to immigrate to Canada. So don't expect it to be something you could just drive over and move in. But look into it. Shelby Hall says Trump is what weak, insecure people think a strong man is supposed to be. Absolutely. A.G. Schultz says Biden wins Georgia. Yes, actually, your comment is what got me to look it up and realize that. Gina McGrath says one of the One of the more under-the-radar victories that deserve more progressive love is Nikema Williams in Georgia's 5th District, who will replace the seat of John Lewis. She supports Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. She's cool. Oh, okay, cool. Honestly, I don't think I know much of anything about her. I'll have to look more into that. But if that is true, awesome. Thank you, Junie. Jairo Agudelo says AOC 2024, she has the balls that Bernie didn't. Possible. I do think she would be successful if she ran. At the same time, you could argue maybe it's too early. I don't think it is, but I'm also looking at Nina Turner. Anyways, whoever it is, Kamala Harris has to face a primary challenge in 2024. I'm saying Kamala Harris because I can't imagine Biden's going to run a second term. But whatever the case, there has to be a primary challenge to Kamala Harris, at the very least to pull her or to push her more to the left. Liam says, don't forget to like the video. Trump is a baby. Yes. Thank you, Liam. Like the video. Hit subscribe. And links below the video to the Patreon page and PayPal and other ways to help support the show. All right. Let me prep this next story, which may be a doozy here. I think there are... it's not too bad. Also, before I even do this segment, once again, shout out to Case Study QB. Always clipping some great videos on Twitter, including the one that I'm about to use. Check them out. All right. I think I'm prepped here. Also, mods, let me know later if I should put slow mode on in case it gets too crazy. Because I know it got crazy a bit during the election. All right. The head of a New York City police union is feeling really hurt by AOC listening to the needs of her community. Yes, let me play this clip here from Fox News. That was clipped out by Case Study QB. Check him out on Twitter. Always puts clips up like this. So listen to what the to what AOC is saying, and then the response from the head of the NYC Police Union.
Hi, Neil. Well, New York area Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez took
And for the live audience, let me fix your audio here.
part in a virtual...
A bit low. I say the live audience because if you don't know, I clip these out later for separate videos. Here we go.
Hi, Neil. Well, New York area Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez took part in a virtual town hall yesterday, and she repeated her call for defunding of the police. Ocasio-Cortez is not backing down from that position, despite criticism from some moderate Democrats that her more extreme views cost Democrats seats during the upcoming election. Earlier this week, as you mentioned, Democratic Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia said his party rejects, in his words, quote, some crazy socialist agenda, adding, we do not believe in defunding the police. Ocasio-Cortez says police resources must be reallocated, adding that this is not only her view, but what she is hearing from her own constituents.
Far too many people who have been killed due to police violence. And when my community is coming out and saying and demanding this, it's my job to listen.
The head of a New York City police union responded to Ocasio-Cortez's remarks, saying in a statement, and I quote, "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez lives in a world of raindrops and lollipops. Her antics of defending the police and accusations of too many people being killed by police is misleading. Young males of color continue to be shot by other males of color. This is occurring in the very same communities she wants to defund." Here in New York City, violent crime continues to spike. Year-to-date homicides are up 37%. The number of shootings compared to a year ago is nearly doubled. The city, meanwhile, has now slashed the NYPD's budget by roughly $1 billion. And despite Ocasio-Cortez's rhetoric, Neil, it's worth keeping in mind that she has no authority.
All right. She was supposed to stop at around here somewhere. All right. So, first of all, the head of the police union here undermines his own argument. If, as he says, black on black crime is the problem, then clearly over-policing isn't working. Maybe defund the police and put some of those resources into those communities that actually need the help. Do police need riot gear? Do they need to be answering calls in regards to homelessness, in regards to domestic disputes, or can that be better handled by, say, public health officials or through infrastructure investment? So it's hilarious to hear like police complain about the crime when it's their job to stop the crime. So if you're not stopping the crime, then the approach of pouring more and more money into the police is clearly not working. Now, they reference there at the end cuts to the NYCP or the New York City police budget, which have not taken effect yet. So they're talking about this rise in crime. Meanwhile, yes, there's going to be a future cut, which I'll get into in a second, how minuscule this cut is. But they're trying to blame the rise in crime on the cut to the police budget when that cut isn't even taking place until next year. So let me show you a little more detail on that specifically. This is the cut. It's almost nothing. So they say it's $1 billion because they were going to put more money into policing, but instead of doing that, they actually reduced it. So from 10,521 here to 10,209. Really not a big cut. And in fact, as they right here, let me zoom in. As they say here, some smaller agencies had a larger proportional decline, including 13.1%, 58 million at the Department of Parks and Recreation, and 24% at the Department of Youth and Community Development. So while people are complaining about this cut to the police budget, it is actually nothing in comparison to other agencies that are being cut by the city. And still, they're trying to pin a rise in crime on a budget cut that hasn't even taken place yet. Now, on whether defund the police or Black Lives Matter hurt Democrats, I don't know how many times I'm going to need to completely annihilate or correct this point, as voter registration surged during the Black Lives Matter protests. So this is what the actual data shows us, that during the pandemic, Democrats had a steep decline in registration until the Black Lives Matter protests, because they signed up a lot of independents, a lot of people who aren't normally politically inclined or who don't normally vote. They got them involved and got them to at least acknowledge that it was time to get out Donald Trump. Even if you don't like Joe Biden, which of course there is not many reasons to like Joe Biden, at the very least, people understood how dangerous Donald Trump was and that he was just making things much, much worse. And they signed up enough people to eventually push Donald Trump out of office. And by the way, not a single progressive member of the House lost their seat. Not a single person that backs Medicare for all lost their seat. And in reality, nobody ran on defund the police. That's just an activist slogan. To try and blame left-wing Democrats for that is just absurd. But nobody ran on that and no one lost. And in fact, the only person that I guess you could argue did run on that is Cori Bush, who won her seat. So this idea that hurt Democrats somehow is just, there's no data at all to back that up. One last thing. Let's compare. I may need to go small here so you can see it fully. Let's look at this. U.S. police kill civilians at a much higher rate than police in other wealthy countries. Now, look, as a Canadian, this number is not good. But this is also the problem with our politics, is we're always comparing ourselves to the U.S. So this looks good in comparison to where the U.S. sits here. This is number of people killed by law enforcement per 10 million population in the most recent year with available data. Look at the difference. Clearly, there is a problem with police killing people. As you can see from the data here, the U.S. Just not even close to any other country. And we scroll down here. If you look at the actual number, this is taking out the per capita aspect of this. So total number of people killed by law enforcement in the most recent year with available data. I mean, this is just absurd. 1,099 compared to Canada 36, Australia 21, Germany 11, and it just goes down from there. Japan 2, New Zealand 1, Iceland 0, Norway 0. So there is an obvious problem here. This is the problem that AOC points out. But the longer these police unions want to deny reality, the longer the point is made for them. I mean, to blame the rise in crime on defunding the police when the defunding hasn't even happened, it shows you that this current route of continuing to pour money into these police departments while there's a rise in crime, while there's cuts to education, cuts to healthcare, cuts to infrastructure, is just not the way to go about this. That was a mistake. All right. More chats. Then I'll get to the other stories here. Lumina M says, love your work, David. Thank you also for commenting on Canadian politics. It really helps me understand our own government. No problem. CJ Smith says, do you think that Pelosi will be speaker again? Probably. The issue is that there's simply, while the caucus of working class politicians is growing in the Democratic Party, while the so-called centrist or moderate Democrat wing, which is really just conservative, pro-corporate Democrat, well, that wing is shrinking. As I said earlier, not a single progressive lost their seat, while progressives only gained. They got Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, and several others. There still isn't enough of them to be able to push for a true working class replacement to Nancy Pelosi. And right now you have moderate Democrats, again, I shouldn't say moderate, I shouldn't use their framing, but you have conservative Democrats pushing Hakeem Jeffries, who is just as, if not more conservative than Nancy Pelosi is, who's already been publicly criticizing the working class wing of the party. So I think it's very possible Pelosi stays speaker, unless there's a real push for Hakeem Jeffries, in which case it may actually be okay, because I think Hakeem Jeffries is going to be a disaster, and he doesn't have any real built-in support from the party apart from the caucus itself. He doesn't have any real support from voters, and I think he has no actual political ability. If you've ever seen Hakeem Jeffries, in an interview, he's terrible on camera. So I don't think he has the talent to really keep himself going. And him being just as bad as Pelosi, if not worse, I can't imagine him being all that successful. But then again, look, if it's him or Pelosi, there really isn't much of a difference. So I hope the working class wing at least tries to push forward somebody. I saw Cenk Uygur today tweet about Rashida Tlaib for House Speaker. That'd be amazing. If that ever happened, that'd be amazing. But there is no way the Democratic House is going to back Rashida Tlaib as House Speaker, apart from the working class politicians in the caucus. But so I just don't think they have the numbers yet. But maybe in 2 or 4 more years, who knows? Adam Ulibari says, thoughts on formation of movement for People's Party. Idea is okay, but realize there is Citizens United and ranked choice voting to overcome. Should MPP coalesce with other third parties? Keep it up, amigo. So I think it's great to continue pushing all these different avenues, whether it's through replacing leaders in the Democratic Party, like the way that Justice Dems are doing, whether it's through Movement for a People's Party, whether it's not electoral politics at all and you want to be involved in Black Lives Matter or the DSA or some other movement or local politics, state politics. All the above is the approach I have. So I think it's good that they're continuing what they're doing. But I also think, look, I've seen some of the strategy, or at least some of the strategy from people who support the People's Party, of attacking the Justice Democrats. I think that's stupid. I think what People's Party could be doing is saying, hey, there's always a home for you, AOC or Rashida Tlaib or Jamal Bowman or Cori Bush. There's always a home for you in our party if you ever want to switch over. If you feel like your voice is stifled by being in the Democratic Party, there's always a home for you here. But instead, I'm seeing people that support the party attack people like AOC, people like Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, just completely insane strategy. So if the Movement for People's Party is going to be successful, it has to separate themselves from those people who are attacking the Just Democrats. Because you need to have this all the above approach. You have to look at what the goal is here. The goal is to have power for the working class. So how do you do that? All the above. So why would you be attacking people who are trying to get that power for the working class? So there has to be an analysis on their strategy so far. As right now, I've just been seeing them align with people who want to attack members of Congress who are actually trying to enact some change. Lorna Paisley says, you are the best, and I keep telling people that. Oh, thank you. I watch several YouTube progressives, and you are at the top of my list. Wow, Lorna, thank you so much. Much appreciated. One more refresh before going on to the next story. Liam says, opinion about Andrew Yang for 2024. He would have to be clear about what he's fighting for, because I've seen him waver too much on some issues. He didn't support Medicare for all. The way he often communicates his UBI, Universal Basic Income, is that he treats it as sort of a panacea. As if you have Universal Basic Income, then all the problems are solved, which he has to know that's not true. You still need a higher minimum wage. You still need a wealth tax. You still need real investment into infrastructure, real investment into the working class, into unions. So he can't just look at UBI as the end all be all. So if he had an updated approach that was more working class focused, I think he could be successful. But he would not be my choice as the person to primary Kamala Harris. And also, I don't think Andrew Yang has the personality to try and primary Kamala Harris or Joe Biden if he runs for a second term. So while he could go for it, he's not my first choice. Anna Jackson says, I think I've seen so much of you lately. I think I know your entire shirt collection. Waiting for a new shirt. I do need some new shirts. That's for sure. Thank you, Anna. Jonathan Fulp says, if we don't win back the Senate, then nothing will change in my eyes. Pelosi has to go as well. You have to replace or continue replacing leaders in the Democratic Party. I mean, it's totally possible to get out Nancy Pelosi. It's totally possible to get out Chuck Schumer with the proper challenge, with the proper time, with the proper investment. But time is a big piece of that, as it takes time for people to understand that it's time to move on. And some of these districts, like Pelosi's district, is very wealthy. It can be hard for an insurgent candidate. Like we saw during this past election, it can be really hard for them to overcome that. So a lot of it depends on the district, but someone like Hakeem Jeffries, totally. I think it's very possible to primary him, which is why I also don't mind if he becomes the speaker, because they could just primary him out in 2 years. Or whenever he's up. Yeah, I guess in 2 years. So we will see. We will see. Let me pause there. All right. Another video to prep here. Because of Trump's narcissism, more than 130 Secret Service workers have tested positive for COVID-19. This story here from Metro. More than 130 U.S. Secret Service workers have been diagnosed with coronavirus in the wake of President Trump's re-election campaign. The infections have sidelined 1 in 10 officers, with the outbreak partially linked to President Trump's heavy schedule of rallies in the weeks leading up to the November 3rd election. He is hurting the very people who are hired to protect him. Imagine having a boss that is this self-obsessed, this narcissistic, that he completely disregards your health and actually puts you into situations where you can get COVID-19. Remember when he was in the hospital and he left like a day later to go and wave at supporters from the truck, and you had 2 Secret Service agents driving him around in there in a hermetically sealed vehicle. I would love to know if those 2 got COVID-19, by the way. They're never specific about this because they don't want to release, these are always leaks. But I can almost guarantee you those 2 in there who were forced to drive that dipshit around, I can almost guarantee you they were 2 of the people that got COVID-19. Just, it's disgusting. And this is in addition, of course, to people in his circle that are getting COVID-19, still to this day getting it, like Corey Lewandowski, one of his advisors, and his chief of staff, Mark Meadows. But let's look at the bigger picture here. Trump campaign rallies led to more than 30,000 coronavirus cases. This is from Stanford Research, and this is from, a couple weeks ago. So, and by the way, these are the numbers that we know about. It's likely a lot more. It continues to amaze me how anybody can find any piece of this man that is worth celebrating. He's just completely disgusting. Let's also, of course, look at the even bigger picture when it comes to COVID-19 in the U.S. This is daily new confirmed COVID-19 cases per million people. This is the rolling 7-day average. This gives you the best idea of how each country is doing. Well, let's take a look at the U.S. Again, this is the only country you'll find that has a trend like this, a line like this, where they never really got out of the first wave. It was a first wave into a second wave into a massive third wave that just continues to increase. The U.S. right now is nearing 200,000 cases a day. It took a few months. Back in April, May, it took a couple months to hit 200,000 cases. Now the U.S. is getting over 100,000 cases a day. It's growing every day, and they're almost getting to the point now where it's going to be over 200,000 cases a day. This is a total failure of leadership. And you look at other countries. Look, the UK doesn't have a good second wave at all, but they're leveling off a bit now. And by the way, conservative government here in the UK. Germany, same thing. Most countries in Europe are seeing a second wave like this. Canada also has a second wave it's all relative, right? Like, these second waves are not good, but when you look at these numbers, I mean, any country matched up to the U.S. looks pretty good. And of course, countries that actually take it seriously, Japan, Cuba, Australia. Also, of course, all islands here. It's a little easier to kind of close your borders to the outside world. But Japan had a mask mandate. They took masks seriously from the start. Numbers never got too big. Cuba, one of the first to almost completely eradicate the virus and actually send their doctors all over the world to help other countries. And Australia as well seems to be doing pretty well. So there are a number of things that Trump could have done that, of course, he just didn't do. Masks being the most obvious. As a leader, he could have led, told his supporters who are already brainwashed to wear a mask. It's important that you wear a mask. And there was a plan, as I've discussed a million times, the plan from the USPS to send out 5 masks to every household back in April. Trump stopped that from happening. So this isn't even just incompetence. This is direct actions that led to more people getting sick and dying. There also could have been, of course, more of a stimulus, an actual investment into people that lost their job. Other countries have real wage subsidies. Germany, I believe, covering about 80 to 90% of your wages if you're not working or can't work, or paying you essentially to stay home. Canada, of course, had a $2,000 a month CERB, which was then folded into unemployment insurance. But other countries had, more financial help for their citizens. The U.S. has nothing, and this is going to continue basically until Joe Biden gets in. Trump's not going to do anything now between now and inauguration. So we're going to have to wait for Joe Biden and then hopefully have a Senate that will actually pass something. But at the very least, that Biden's going to do what he can in terms of executive orders. And he also has the man that led the Ebola crisis, or the response to it, as his chief of staff. He was highly regarded in his response to Ebola, so hopefully they'll have a better, a more thorough reaction to COVID-19 and doing what they can to stop this pandemic. But man, it's been a complete failure of Donald Trump, and I'm just thinking of the hundreds of thousands of people that are getting it every day, and the people that, even if you've survived, there are long-term health impacts of COVID-19. So often what you hear the media focus on is the death rate. Oh, well, the death rate's going down, which, sure, that's good, of course, but there are long-term health effects of having COVID-19, including insomnia, depression, anxiety, damage to the heart, damage to the lungs, damage to the brain. So even if you survive it, it has a long-term impact on you that will also, of course, as an American, it's going to infect, but potentially or impact your health insurance. All those people now have pre-existing conditions. So we really don't know to what extent the damage that COVID-19 has caused. We're really not going to understand that until years into the future. All right. Hopefully no more depressing stories, though. I think, no, they kind of all are. They're all depressing to varying degrees, but that's the news. Let me see if there's some more chats before going on. Can you guys hear my chair, by the way? I feel like it's a little more noisier than it used to be. It's pretty much every piece of IKEA furniture ever. Starts off great, and then you actually use it for a few months, and then it falls apart. But it's what I have to work with. All right, got to find my place. Adam Bryceland says, you may disagree, but I think Dems didn't take the Senate because voter suppression is way worse than you think. Susan Collins totally should have lost. Yeah, the Susan Collins race is one that was really off in terms of polling. She definitely should have lost, for sure. But yeah, voter suppression is always a piece of the puzzle, for sure. But ultimately, I'm going to have to look at more data to understand what happened in that race specifically. But ultimately, look, people were surprised that Trump's base not only showed up, but it grew. He got more votes than 2016, which Doesn't say a lot for the American people. But that said, Biden got that much more. So there is still hope. There's definitely still hope. Sore Loser, thank you for the super chat. CJ Smith says, do you think Mayor Pete is a national security miasma plant or a pure enlightened centrist or something else? I think he's just a centrist. He's somebody who, I don't know, like his father was a Marxist, which, I mean, actually, same thing with Kamala Harris. So it's disappointing. It's disappointing to see what children came out of them. So this is, I don't know. That said, he was useful during the Joe Biden-Trump election, at least. He was actually a great attack dog on Fox News against Donald Trump. But now, I got to see what he's saying now, because I actually haven't paid attention at all to Pete Buttigieg because I don't want to, but I haven't seen anything from him since the election. So I'm not sure where he's putting blame about, Democrats losing some seats in the House. I'm not sure if he's trying to blame, the working class side of the party. But that will dictate how I feel about him now. So I hope he doesn't run again. I don't think he would have much of a chance, honestly. I don't think he's all that talented. But unless he has some power, I really couldn't care less about Pete Buttigieg, and he really has no power right now. Okay, I'm going to stop there. This next story may take me a while to prep. Let me see here. It's not too bad. Oh, no. Yeah, it is. I skipped one. But I like this story quite a bit. Not because it's positive, but because we should be talking about this. You will see what it is. Almost there. All right. I think I'm good. Grocery store chain Loblaws has announced record profits. This is while they continue to underpay their frontline workers during this pandemic. So first, the headline here from Kitchener Today. Pandemic-related spending patterns help Loblaws beat Q3 profit expectations. Now, if you read through this piece, which is a Canadian press piece, doesn't mention anything at all about Loblaws underpaying their workers, and in fact, canceling an increase in their pay over the summer. So revenue for what was a 16-week period totaled $15.67 billion, up from nearly $14.66 billion in the same quarter a year earlier. Oh, isn't that fantastic? Yeah. Read through this. No mention at all about how they're underpaying employees. I will get to, though, in a minute, a headline that actually surprisingly did put this into context. But first here, look, there are strikes going on around the country right now of Loblaws workers. Again, you'd think this is something that would be mentioned in a piece like this, but didn't bring it up. But there are workers on strike. And they scrapped a $2 hourly bonus for grocery store workers over the summer. So a little more on this specifically. Quote, I feel like people don't understand. They don't see the people crying in the break rooms every day because they're so scared of getting their family sick. No one sees that. Loblaws employee Jocelyn Leask told CTV News for the streaming app Quibi on Saturday. On top of her regular duties as a seafood clerk, Leask was also asked to help out in other departments, deliver groceries to vehicles waiting in the parking lot, and count customers at the door to abide by new capacity limits. Quote, I've never really worked that many hours, and especially in that environment where you have to be safe, she said. It's a lot to take in. So I think it said the added hours here. Yeah. So her hours were 34 hours a week. Now it's, or at least this is over the summer, up to 60 hours per week. And the only thing offsetting that was that the fact that their pay was at least increased by $2. And then Loblaws, because they want to make more money for their shareholders, cut that pay increase. And then all of a sudden, wow, look at that. Increasing profits year over year, looking fantastic. The reality is this is capitalism. This is when you have a company this large, employing this many people, working this hard on the front lines of this pandemic, allowing people to get through this time. When their pay is cut and they're still able to have articles talking about how it's awesome that Loblaws beat Q3 profit expectations, this is the issue with capitalism. We have a system here where it's just normal. It's completely normal to focus on how well a company is doing as opposed to how well people are doing. If we had a media that actually, where the focus was on the working class, as it should be, the media should be representing the interests of the working class. If we had a media that properly represented that, these companies would not be able to get away with this. But we have a media here that continues to prop up the shareholders, prop up these massive corporations over the interests of the average person. I do want to share one thing, though, that surprised me. The Star actually reported this accurately in their headline. Loblaw raises shareholders' dividend but won't be reinstating hero pay to frontline workers. This is exactly how the news should be covering this. If you're going to mention how shareholders are benefiting, you have to also mention how the workers of that company are doing. Without the two together, you don't have the full picture. But ultimately, we continue operating within this capitalist system that limits our ability to have any sort of power and any sort of real agency over our lives. All right, here's your Canadian story, working class story. And that's happening all across the world, by the way. It's not just, it's not just Loblaws. It's pretty much every massive corporation. This is how workers are treated. This is how the media, how society looks at all of these issues, looks at how the corporation is doing, how the shareholders are doing. There's always the business part, or the business section of local news or of national news. They always have that part where they talk about how the markets are doing. Why isn't there 10 minutes spent on how the working class is doing? Like, think about, you have to understand how the entire media revolves around a capitalist system and never questions the status quo. When you have news, put aside 10 minutes to talk about business and not 10 minutes to talk about how the working class is doing, it shows you how skewed our media is. Okay. Next up is a Rand Paul video. Always fun. Let me see if there's any chats. If not, we'll move right on to Rand Paul. There is one. Aritro Pathak says Trump will now fight Paul Heyman in WrestleMania. I don't know shit about anything. I haven't watched wrestling for like 20 years. But I used to watch it. I used to. But now I have no idea. Like, to me, John Cena is a new wrestler. That's, in case you're wondering how long ago it's been since I watched wrestling. John Cena is new to me. My era is Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, The Undertaker. That's where it's at. All right. Got to prep this Rand Paul video. All right, there's actually a lot to this. All right. All right, there we go. GOP Senator Rand Paul was on Fox News spreading misinformation about COVID-19. Watch this.
Protecting them. But the other thing is we have 11 million.
Live audience, I apologize. No one knows how to put the audio peaking at -6. It's really disappointing.
Protecting them. But the other thing is we have 11 million people in our country who have already had COVID. We should tell them to celebrate. We should tell them to throw away their masks, go to restaurants, live again, because these people are now immune. But Dr. Fauci doesn't want to admit to any of that. Dr. Fauci's like, oh, woe is me, until the election occurs, and now maybe he'll be changing his attitude.
Yeah, this is not true. Rand Paul, who is apparently a doctor, a medical doctor, is not up to date on the research. In fact, yes, you can get COVID-19 twice. It's happened several times, including in the U.S. The first study to confirm a case of coronavirus reinfection in the U.S. found evidence that an individual with no known immune disorders or underlying health conditions was infected with SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, in 2 separate instances. They go on to say here, according to a new study published Monday in The Lancet, the 25-year-old Nevada man was infected by 2 different SARS-CoV-2 variants with a 48-day time frame, while testing negative between each infection. Research shows that, yes, in fact, you can get COVID-19 twice. And just looking at the trends right now, this is from the COVID Tracking Project. You can follow them, though I don't. Maybe I should. Follow them on Twitter for daily updates. This is the trend. Let me go smaller here. If you take a look, clearly, It's not looking good. Daily testing, daily cases. Look at this. It's continuing to peak. Currently hospitalized, also at its highest point ever. And daily deaths are going down. But as I've said in the past in other videos, death is not the only measurement here. And the US media really needs to stop focusing on just the deaths, because there are long-term health effects of having COVID-19. In fact, let me tell you some of those right here. So let me go a little larger. I feel weird down here. Here we go. That's better. So, organ damage caused by COVID-19. Organs that may be affected by COVID-19 include heart, imaging tests taken months after recovery from COVID-19 have shown lasting damage to the heart muscle, even in people who experienced only mild COVID-19 symptoms. This may increase the risk of heart failure or other heart complications in the future. Lungs, the type of pneumonia often associated with COVID-19, can cause long-standing damage to the tiny air sacs in the lungs. The resulting scar tissue can lead to long-term breathing problems. And the brain. Even in young people, COVID-19 can cause strokes, seizures, and I have the actual pronunciation here because this is a weird word or a weird term. Guillain-Barré syndrome. So, where was I? Lost my place now. Here we go. So, even in young people, COVID-19 can cause strokes, seizures, and Guillain-Barré syndrome, a condition that causes temporary paralysis. COVID-19 may also increase the risk of developing Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. And that's also in addition to insomnia, anxiety, depression, and other impacts of having COVID-19. So there is this really weird idea that's pushed out there by politicians, by the media, that the only thing that matters is the death rate. You know, if you survive COVID-19, then it's all good, no problem. COVID-19, not really a problem except for the few old people that are dying, except that it's not the case. Anyone of any age can die. But on top of that, these long-term health effects are clearly serious. So to continue having on people like, or continue having people like Rand Paul pushing this idea out there as a medical doctor, pushing this idea out there that you can just throw away the mask once you've had COVID-19, that you can't transfer it to other people if you get it again. It's dangerous, and it's not based in any research or any science. Guillain-Barré. Oh, man. The stuff you don't see behind the scenes sometimes. Like if I pre-shoot a video and there's a term like that, you better bet your butt I cut out the mispronunciation. But I always look up this stuff beforehand, like names as well. As I've always had a last name that people mispronounce, I want to make sure I know how to pronounce someone's name, which is why if you see me answering a lot of the comments in the chat, I'm horrible at knowing anybody's name or knowing how to pronounce it. But luckily, the stories that I do, usually there's a pronunciation of people's names out there that I could just look up. All right. Grab some more chats. Ryan Nowicki says, what are the chances that the R party is completely fractured due to Trump waging war on Fox News? And how do you think that will affect the 2022 race? There's definitely a fracture there, but I don't know how permanent it really is. Look at Trump's approval rating. It's like 95% of Republicans support Donald Trump. So how much of a fracture is there really if the entire party is behind Donald Trump? It's clear what the party's about. So when it comes to Fox News or conservative media, yeah, there I can see the actual fracturing. As I covered recently, Newsmax, another conservative channel, I guess, they have seen massive increases in their viewership since the summer. They went from averaging around 25,000 views over the summer to now getting 800,000, 700,000 for their primetime shows, which is really friggin' good for a smaller conservative news station. So a lot of, and Trump yesterday was retweeting all these people who were attacking Fox and saying move to Newsmax. So Trump is only helping Newsmax there. So it's funny because I'm not at all in that world. I don't really know where the fracture is. I guess one side wants to acknowledge that Trump lost the election and the other side doesn't. Because apart from that, when it comes to the actual policy, what they're fighting for, what GOP politicians fight for, it's the exact same thing Trump is fighting for. There's no difference there. The only difference is in performance, is in language, is in rhetoric. So it's weird to see any sort of differences when they're all pushing the exact same message when it comes to actual policy, just maybe different ways of pushing out that message. But in terms of the impact on 2022, that's going to really completely depend on what Joe Biden does. If Joe Biden actually pushes for some transformational change, if there is a clear difference between the past 4 years of Trump and the first 4 years of Joe Biden, that's what's going to matter. But the other issue that Biden's up against is people have short-term memory. So they really just look at, how has my life been in the past couple months? If they're doing well, then maybe they'll stick with Joe Biden. But if not, then maybe they'll completely forget how horrible things were under Republicans and want to vote more in. I don't. It's hard for me to even understand swing voters, as I don't really think that's a huge portion of the voter base. I think you really have the two locked-in parties. Then you have independents who either don't vote or do vote. And if they vote, then they vote for what they're more inclined to vote for, either conservative or more progressive. But this is why Democrats have to try and activate a non-voting base. They have to try and get non-voters out to vote. And the only way to really do that is to prove to them that you can improve their lives. So if Joe Biden can do that with something, let's hope, then there is the potential there to encourage more people out. But not even just Biden, also the Democratic Party as a whole. What senators do, what your representatives do, that is what's going to drive turnout or not drive turnout in 2022. And a big piece of that, of course, has to be the fight. They have to show a real fight against Republicans if there's obstruction in the Senate, but also a fight for people and what their vision for the country actually is. If there is no vision there and it's all just attacking Republicans, it's not going to work out for Democrats. Fly Chomper Fly says, Prog Rocker still can't send super chats, not even on another device, yet can send other channels. Is there anyone who can help? That's weird. I would say mods look into Prog Rocker, make sure there's no restrictions on his account, but I have no idea. That's odd. Juna McGrath says, would it be awesome if Charles Booker could replace Paul in 2022? He almost beat an establishment Dem with him achieving name recognition over the summer. I think he would have a decent shot. I would love to see Charles Booker more involved. He really should have gone up against Mitch McConnell. But, powers that be prevented that. But we will see. All right. Gonna pause there. I think I have one more story. Two more stories. One more story. One more story. All right. There are a lot of links to this one, but it's also kind of the point of the story, as you're going to see. And then I'll grab all your chats. All right, almost there. The only Democrats to lose seats in the election were moderate/conservative Democrats. Despite that, the so-called moderate wing, or I like to say conservative wing of the party, continues to blame politicians like Ocasio-Cortez for hurting their races. Now, as I said before the election, if Donald Trump got voted out, one of the main benefits would be that Trump would no longer be a distraction, and we could actually focus on the fight of neoliberalism versus the working class. And because the facts are on the side of the working class, we would get a lot more people on board with this fight. And as we've seen since the election, AOC is not taking these attacks lying down. As I expected, and as I discussed before the election, she's helping to lead this fight, as will other Democrats in the House like Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. But I'm going to show you some of what AOC has been tweeting out since the election. That shows you she is not holding back. Starting with this. Let me first reference the tweet here. Senator Joe Manchin, who people may forget is a Democrat from West Virginia, saying, "Defund the police, defund my butt. I'm a proud West Virginia Democrat. We are the party of working men and women. We want to protect Americans' jobs and health care. We do not have some crazy socialist agenda, and we do not believe in defunding the police." And in response to that, see, sends out this image of her just staring into the back of Joe Manchin's head. Look, this is the one of the great parts about getting out Trump. Obviously, you know, all the damage he's done, yes, remove the man. But apart from that, just we're going to have an actual fight. There's going to be an actual discussion that isn't just pushed by people on YouTube or people in articles in Jacobin, but people in Congress that are going to be actively and openly engaged in a fight against neoliberalism, against these fake progressives or fake Democrats like Joe Manchin. And I know this is just an image. It's not like changing laws, but understand it takes a certain initiative. It takes a certain fight to be able to begin those conversations and push for real change. And ultimately, it comes down to a people movement. If you're not in the streets, if you're not protesting, maybe even a general strike sometime in the future, if that isn't happening, then these people like AOC have no power. But if there are people engaged in the street on top of you having people in Congress fighting for you, that's where you can have some real wins. But some other tweets here. Waleed Shahid tweeted this out. He's from Justice Dems, saying, New York Times covering the abolitionist movement in 1859. Quote, "They are as rancorous and abusive as if they were on the point of utter annihilation. Their speeches sound more like the ravings of bedlamites than the utterances of men seeking the accomplishment of a practical object." Basically, back then they were talking about it was crazy that Lincoln was pushing to, actually, this is what I want to quote, pushing to abolish slavery. Quote, if Mr. Lincoln be elected, he will have to cut off the abolition and extreme wing of his party. Otherwise, he will go by the board. Mr. Thompson believes that President Lincoln, being a practical, common sense man and an old Whig, would reject the radical Republicans. So here, Lincoln being pushed in the press to reject the idea that they should abolish slavery. And AOC responded to this saying, sounds familiar. As, of course, right now, she's in a similar fight against the establishment in her party and her trying to fight for the working class. Meanwhile, the powers in the party continue fighting against any sort of progress. Also, pushing back on the misinformation that somehow progressives cost or Medicare for All or whatever cost Democrats seats in the House. As she says here, voters support Medicare for All. This is based on a recent poll that I've shared a bunch of times, where 46% of Republicans support Medicare for All, 88% of Democrats support Medicare for all, 68% of independents support Medicare for all, and all 6 swing district co-sponsors of Medicare for All won the re-election. Not a single Democrat that backs Medicare for All lost a seat. Yet, you have people in the party trying to act like, no, it was the people that back Medicare for All. They're the reason that we lost. No, maybe it's because you didn't have a message. And maybe it's because you didn't have any real campaign, didn't invest properly into online, into social media, into actually getting your name out there, getting your message out there, which AOC has also discussed as well. Another comment here. Heather Cagle tweets out, do we want to govern or do we want to be internet celebrities? This is from Representative Jeffries, I believe Hakeem Jeffries, who is right now being floated as a potential replacement to Nancy Pelosi. He's just as conservative, if not more conservative than Nancy Pelosi. So apparently he said this on a private leadership call. AOC replying to it, saying, pretty astounding that some Dems don't believe it's possible to govern, be politically popular, and command formidable bully pulpits at the same time. But it actually explains a lot about how we got here. This is so on point, because here you have this idea being pushed out there that if you're popular on the internet, that means you can't govern properly. Why? AOC is popular not because she is, a young Latina in Congress. It's because she has an actual message. She's actually fighting for, she's from the working class. So when you have somebody who is actually from the working class and pushing a working class message and runs a campaign without taking any big donor money, without taking any corporate money, and continues fighting those within her own party that is pushing back on any idea of progress, that is why she is popular. And actually doing something to benefit people in real life is also popular. So the idea that you can't both be popular online and also push real policy forward that actually helps people is insane. And this is the guy who's potentially replacing Nancy Pelosi. Again, regardless of if it's Pelosi or Hakeem Jeffries replacing her, it's going to be the exact same fight because both of them represent the status quo, represent the corporate interest. It's still going to be about raising as much money as possible from the big donors that the party has. And we're going to have this fight continue where AOC, Jamal Bowman, and others are pushing back against that. But some more tweets here. This is in reply to Matthew Chapman here saying, stop saying defund the police. AOC tweets out saying this was a call from communities that got unfolded in real time. Activists don't focus group. BLM is not the DNC. It's a politician's job to own their message. By the way, it was effective. New York City is shifting to mental health workers at some 911 calls, and policies changed faster than an election cycle. So basically making the point here that to pin a slogan like defund the police on politicians who didn't run on that is absurd. It came from activist movements. And in fact, there's books written on this. There's a lot of research into this on defund the police. It isn't just a slogan, as it is often treated by conservative Democrats in the party. There is actual meat behind it. It actually means something. So by them treating this as just a slogan, or even just trying to pin it on Democratic politicians who didn't even run on the slogan, is clearly disingenuous. And again, another attempt here to try and undermine those in the party who are trying to push for some real progress. More here. AOC tweets out, for the Dems who think I'm just being a selfish, divisive bomb thrower from a deep blue seat, maybe you'll listen to Doug Jones in Alabama when he says the same thing. So this is a part of the criticism that AOC has of the party, that the issue with Democrats' campaign operations is not ideological, but structural. The reason why it's an issue with the structure is because there is no real investment into these states. And this is coming from Doug Jones, incredibly conservative Democratic senator from Alabama who just lost his reelection. But he's saying the exact same thing, that all the money was put into people, put into individuals, put into campaigns, as opposed to investing into groups on the ground, putting a real investment into the people that live in that state, so that even if that campaign loses, that there is a continuation of those ideals. But the Democratic Party is a total failure when it comes to actually investing into people, and not just when it comes to policy, but also when it comes to campaigning and understanding the need to actually build a real brand that people like. Couple more here. Cori Bush, who is friggin' awesome right now, she's my favorite in the House, has just been killing it on cable news. I'm amazed she's even invited on with the things she's been saying on television. But tweeting out here, the base has passed a $15 minimum wage in Florida. The base legalized cannabis in all these states. The base re-elected 112 co-sponsors of Medicare for All. The progressive agenda wins. This is exactly right. I covered this right after the election. Watch my video on John Kasich and AOC. I go through all the data, point by point. Look at the actual policy. How does Medicare for All do in polling? How does a wealth tax do? You look at all these various issues, and you look at what was actually passed through these ballot initiatives, what people actually supported. Even in a state like Florida that went for Trump, they passed a wage raise here. So clearly people side with policies that benefit the working class. Yet the Democratic Party is still trying to reject that reality. And last thing here, as I lose my voice, AOC is also pushing to invest into the races in Georgia. And again, she's putting her money where her mouth is, not just saying that the Democratic Party isn't investing properly into these states, but working herself to actually invest into these states. So she tweets out here, Georgia isn't a red state, it's a voter suppressed state. Last night, Team AOC mobilized to raise $100,000 directly to grassroots orgs, Fair Fight Action and New Georgia Project and more. And by the way, this is a couple days ago, so they've raised a lot more than 100,000 since then. Time to change forward to support the folks. Time to charge forward and support the folks leading the way. Let's kick it up. So check out the group here if you want to put some money behind this. But you see that it's not just talk. She's doing what she can right now in this lame duck to push for some actual change, and at some point try and push for policy that actually benefits society. But of course, that will take replacing more Democrats in the House. That will take a larger working class caucus in the House, but that caucus continues growing. They added Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, and a few others. Meanwhile, conservative Democrats, corporate Democrats, actually lost seats in the House. So the progressive power in the House continues growing while the conservatives continue to lose their grip. All right, just in time as I'm losing my voice. Fantastic. Let me grab any chats that are left and maybe grab some normie chats as well. This really is my favorite part of the stream, just talking with the people. And by the way, I would love to do more. If you've been on my Twitch streams in the past, I have not been on there for a while, but I would like to do more of those. I just need to get my bearings, because back then I was doing a lot more. I was able to put out videos or finish videos a day before, then put it out in the morning, meaning I was free to actually do those morning streams on Twitch. But recently it's been a little too crazy. I have not been able to do that. But yeah, the best part of those Twitch streams was the fact that I could talk to all of you people a little more intimately. So I'd like to do more of that in the future. I will get back to it at some point. But let me find my place here in the chats and grab these. Sean it's funny, your comment completely undermines me right now. But Sean Domenico, which I think I said it properly before, or I said it that way earlier, says, LOL, you're one of a handful of people who was able to pronounce my name. Yes, after a few tries. Keep up the great work, David. Green Party and leftist solidarity. Samantha Sider says, got shit-faced Friday waiting for a call on Biden win. I think a lot of people did. Xavier Belair says, hi, David, South African here. Why doesn't Biden's coronavirus task force work with Fauci? What is the dynamic there? So my understanding is, look, Fauci's still working with Trump, right? So if they want Fauci to be a part of it, which apparently, according to some reporting, Biden does want Fauci to be a part of it, they're going to have to wait till Trump concedes, and Fauci is free to do that. But until then, they're kind of hamstrung by the fact that Trump is being a big fat child. Unimoose Productions says, what are the chances Trump goes to jail? His false accusations of substantial voter fraud does nothing but divide our country. It's terrorism in a way. If he went to jail, I don't think it would be on that. Well, I mean, that could be a reason that I would like to see him in jail, but you can't go to jail for lying. But I don't know. He has broken the law a number of times. They could definitely go after him. This is always the issue, and why none of these people go to jail is because if you, the idea is, I don't agree with this, but the idea is that if you start actually prosecuting people that were in power for wrongdoings, and then you can kind of go back and also put pretty much everybody else in jail for war crimes. Barack Obama for all the drones, George Bush, of course, for all the wars, and Obama for wars as well. So you can kind of go down the list and do that. But I guess if it's in a narrow sense, and they don't do it because of anything related to foreign policy, I guess you could, look at the laws that Trump broke and do something about that. Of course, look, I would love to see that. People should be held accountable. If you were in power and you broke the law or you killed innocent people, then you should be held accountable. But I don't have that power. People in power have that power, and then they're afraid that if they do something wrong, the next person puts them in jail. So I'm sure Trump will get away and nothing will happen. Nothing will come of this, but we'll see. Erica Kristen says, just got done work and missed the chat. We'll watch later. Hope media does not give Rump a platform after 120 unless it's covering a conviction. I hope so. I hope. If we could all just ignore Trump after Inauguration Day, that'd be fantastic. But I'm sure he's going to start Trump TV or maybe start a run for 2024. I don't know. The issue is it's really good for ratings for these networks. But I'm telling you, after Inauguration Day, I'm not covering Trump. Once he's not in power, I have no reason to cover him unless he's doing something to destroy the country still. But apart from that, I will pretend like he does not exist. Electron Creation says, I had COVID in late spring, then had a COVID-related stroke in August. It happens. Jesus Christ. I hope you're okay. Wow. Yeah. We really do not understand the full extent of these long-term health impacts of having COVID-19. The Sing on the Left says the Dems lost so many seats, the progressive group of 10 to 12 people can affect legislation by withholding votes and using the bully pulpit to defend it. Yes. You are right. There is more of them now, more working class. If you notice, I'm changing my language around some of this stuff. Progressive, I don't think is a good word. I think it's Nancy Pelosi says she's progressive. Clyburn said he's the most progressive person in Washington. So progressive is not the right word. Working class, I think, is the right term we should be going with. It actually means something. So yes, these politicians that represent the working class more than other Democrats do, they do have more of a voting bloc now than they did in the past. And as I said earlier, the conservatives, corporate Democrats, they're losing their control. They lost seats. So yes, the power of them is continuing. The power of the working class. Vel Jones says, what's up with criticism that the squad has not done enough and have not been as critical as they could be of Democratic leadership? Unfair, I think. I agree with you. It completely lacks context. It lacks you have to understand how government works. When there's like 6 of you in Congress, only so much you can really do. And when you're in the minority, you sort of have to play a little ball behind the scenes. You have to, stroke their egos a little bit in public. To be able to push things that you want through. Like, people go after AOC for calling Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear once. To me, that's brilliant strategy. Call her Mama Bear publicly, try and get on her good side a little bit, and then continue pushing what you want to push through and be a part of the conversation until you actually have power, until you have leadership until you have a big enough voting bloc which they kind of do now, as already mentioned, to actually impact what gets pushed through the House. There's only so much these people can do. And also with Trump being the president during their entire tenure so far, that also limits the ability for them to fight for what they want to fight for, because they could be accused of ignoring Donald Trump. So now as you're already seeing with AOC, as I just showed you, with Cori Bush, as you've seen, I've covered a couple clips now of her on television since the election, Jamal Bowman, Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, others, they're going to be a lot more chains off, I guess. They're going to be a lot more free to actually do and say what they want to do and say, because they have more power now than they had before. So there's no problem with pushing them in the right direction. Like, they aren't free from criticism. You can definitely criticize them, but it has to be proportional. Like, if you're only criticizing the squad and then you're ignoring Donald Trump and what he's done, then what the hell are you doing? Like, you have to think about, like, especially as somebody in this role that I talk to you people, I have some kind of an impact on some people. I have a responsibility to have a proportional response to all of these issues. So that's why I've been going after Trump a lot more before the election. That's why I'll go after Biden more now that he's going to be president. And we're going to continue keeping an eye on anybody that has power. But it has to be proportional. You can't act like the squad or certain individuals are the reason why there's no progress being done, when the reality is just the way politics works, how their power is limited, has to play into your calculation. Juna McGraw says Ilhan Omar delivered Minnesota, Rashida Tlaib delivered Michigan, Stacey Abrams delivered Georgia, and the Navajo Nation delivered Arizona. John Kasich didn't deliver Ohio, and the Lincoln Project delivered 93% of Republican representatives to Trump. Or is that Republicans? Yeah, of course. Yes. Ilhan Omar, Tlaib, Stacey Abrams, the Navajo Nation, all they did was benefit. They were the ones that won these fights. Any fights that were actually won was won by these groups on the ground and won by the politicians actually putting the work in. Ilhan Omar did door knocking, even though other campaigns or other Democratic state parties were not pushing for any sort of real in-person campaigning. Ilhan Omar did do that, and Minnesota wasn't even close. Joe Biden won it in big numbers, especially compared to other states that were a little more, on the line. But yeah, of course, John Kasich, somebody who was all over cable news after the election, it's insane that anybody feels the need to bring him on and listen to him when he has no leg to stand on. His state did not go for Joe Biden. He did nothing to actually try and get any of these wins. And then he's trying to claim victory or trying to attack those that actually did do good. It's actually pretty gross. Lena Dell hates the clock, says Trump is steering people to one American news. I think you mean OAN. Yes. To OANN and Newsmax. That's what he's been pushing people towards. But there's also that, as I covered today, there's also that story out that he may try and start his own network. But it would be subscription online only. I can't see him having the resources to really push for like a new television station, but I don't know. Lena Dell hates the clock also says Rand Paul steering people to Parler app. Duranda Light says we got to push. I don't know what that says. Oh, littler windows are a half measure. Oh, we need to cancel Windows. This is a reference. I think it's a reference to something that Trump said during one of the debates where he talked about how the Green New Deal pushing for these little tiny windows. And it was like, I can't imagine anybody changed their vote to Trump because they were afraid of the little tiny windows. But yes, definitely got to push further than littler windows. Got to push for no windows at all. Obviously a joke there. Thank you so much for your super chat. All right, winding down. Let me grab some normie chats from the chat. What's happening in the normie chat? Maybe I'll just look at the screen. What's the screen saying? Progressives need to get into politics in order to change the system. Yes, I agree with you. What are the issues that Dems should push to try and win the Georgia Senate seats? The ones they're not pushing. So John Ossoff has already said he's against basically everything that the left is pushing for. But it really comes down to on the ground organizing. The reason that Joe Biden won the state of Georgia. So in terms of messaging, they're going to push the things that that they need to push that they're not going to push. So look, they need to push healthcare. Healthcare is always a major issue for all Americans, especially right now during COVID. That needs to be front and center. Even though it's not Medicare for all, public option is something, and it could be a message to people who maybe lost their job and lost their healthcare because they lost their job. Again, crazy system to have your healthcare tied to your employer, but healthcare definitely part of the message. Higher wages should be a part of the message. But the issue is what these senators or candidates are pushing, because if that isn't in their platform, then they're not going to push for what they actually need to push. So ultimately, it comes down to being able to register enough people in the state and have a big turnout the way they had for Joe Biden, but which didn't ultimately reflect in those two Senate races. Okay, let me go to the side chat here. There's more coming in, all right. Tyler Cross says we are actually running out of sand that can be used for industrial use, so there may be no windows soon. Oh, shit. I know nothing about that, but that sounds hilarious. I definitely don't want teeny tiny windows. I'm not for teeny tiny windows. In fact, big windows, you would think, can heat your place. Instead of having the heater on, have big windows with sun coming in. There you go. Heats your place. And then put the shades down when it's too hot. Seems like a good way to regulate the temperature without needing to spend money on heat or AC. But what do I know? I'm looking at some more chats here. What can I grab? Larissa Linderman says, good for you, David, for setting limits regarding not talking about Trump after inauguration. I just hate the man. I hate him. So I really do not want to talk about him. I thank you for your kind words, but if I don't have to talk about Trump, I'm not going to. In fact, you could argue I didn't talk about him enough while he was president. I really didn't focus on him much till the election. Just because I hate the man so much. So I feel like it's hard for me to get out a proper analysis of anything because in relation to him, because I can't freaking stand him. But yeah, once he has no power, why would I waste my time? Which is why I hope this venture for Trump TV is a failure or doesn't go through, because there could be some potential legs on that. All right, let me grab some more chats here. I want to hang here a while. I enjoy this. Maybe hang here till about like 10 more minutes, 5 more minutes. Let's see. Also, feel free to open up the chat. I mean, it doesn't need to be just politics. Ask me about whatever. Bernie was a lot more fun to talk about than Trump. Yes, definitely. Bernie was definitely a lot more enjoyable to talk about. I mean, Bernie's basically the reason this channel exists. I launched this channel because I was inspired by Bernie Sanders. I ran as a Green Party candidate because I was inspired by Bernie Sanders. And then after that, I launched this channel. And absolutely has a massive impact on my politics, as I'm sure he did for many. Liam, born in DC, says, when are you going to buy a kimono? That's funny. Does pineapple belong on pizza? I'm not going to make many friends with this one, but yes, why not? Why not? I enjoy Hawaiian pizza, which is not actually Hawaiian, but it's actually Canadian. Hawaiian pizza is not at all Hawaiian, but I like Hawaiian pizza. That said, I've stopped eating meat, so I can't actually have true Hawaiian pizza anymore. But you can kind of imitate it with some fake ham, some fake bacon. I like it. Call me crazy. I like the mix of the sweet and the sour. That's what it is. That's why it works. Somebody mentioned tacos. My favorite food is Mexican food. Do you play Pokemon Go? No, I don't. Corny80 asks, what kind of life do you want when you hit 60? Rural or pastoral? I would like to, I haven't thought much about it, but I don't know. The thing with me, I change every year. Like what I actually want changes all the time. The way I think right now, I feel like the idea of living somewhere peaceful, maybe a little quieter, would be nice. But at the same time, maybe that'd be too depressing. Maybe in my old age, I want to be a little more engaged in what's going on. So I don't know. I also don't see myself ever actually retiring. I figure I'll do this forever, as I enjoy doing this work. There's no reason to retire, but we will see. Do you play poker? I have, but I don't play it on the regular. Sammy Rose, are you single? No, I'm not. Amy Walden, cats or dogs? I like both, but for my lifestyle, cats work better because they take care of themselves. Dogs are too needy. Got to take them out for walks and stuff. I feel bad for dogs that I see going out for walks in the city, especially larger dogs, because I live in the city. I just feel I could never limit a dog, at least a large dog, to an apartment. And cats, they just do their own thing. So I would choose cats over dogs, but I like both. Do I have any pets? No, I don't. All right, this is fun, but any news about Ubisoft Montreal, a hostage situation? What? Are you being what's that referencing? What? I don't know anything about this. Hold up. Let's look at this story. If it loads for me, page is not working. Oh my God. I'm only seeing headlines because every page is ad blocking me. Okay. Let's check this out briefly. Major police operation underway in Montreal's Milan neighborhood after reports of a hostage situation at Ubisoft offices. That's so crazy. Being evacuated, no threats have been detected. Police have cordoned off the area. No injury. Okay, I don't know. No idea, but that sounds like a crazy situation. Rogue Femme says cats still need love, though. Of course, yeah, they do, but I don't need to take a cat for a walk. Is your partner also vegetarian / vegan? Yes. Pescatarian. We're more pescatarians. I know personally, I have Portuguese roots. I can never give up seafood. It's not happening. But I never thought I could give up meat either, and I eventually did. But I like shellfish too much. I'm not sure how I would ever give up shrimp or like crab. I don't think so. Or tuna. Rick Sanchez, can you talk about Canada's healthcare system in more detail? Sure. It's kind of an open-ended question. So it's a single-payer system, like Medicare for All would be. I mean, the best way to describe it is my experience with it. I've been to the doctor, number of times over the years. I had surgery once. I've never had to pay for anything except for minor prescriptions. I've never had any serious health issues. So, some people, we don't have full comprehensive healthcare here. We don't have dental coverage, don't have pharmacare coverage. So there's still some out-of-pocket expenses there. But in terms of my experience with it, I mean, say you go to the doctor. You have a health card. They take your health card. They put you in the computer. And you wait for your appointment. You go in. You see the doctor. Then you leave. And that's it. There's no interaction at the counter unless you want to, schedule a next appointment. But you just go to the doctor and you leave. I mean, I'm trying to think of a better way to describe it. But that's it. And if you ever... We have walk-in clinics as well. So you can have a family doctor, but you also can go to any walk-in clinic and get help, get treatment. And it stays the same, of course, regardless of your employment situation. Some employers offer supplemental private insurance, which could cover things like pharmaceuticals. If you have to pay a lot out of pocket for any medical condition you may have. Or may cover dental. So I had a job where at an office where they covered my dental. So that was good. But apart from that, I mean, I don't know. It's the kind of thing where you don't have to think about it. I don't think about healthcare. I know it's on the minds of Americans all the time because you got to think about the cost of it. You have to worry about it is, out-of-pocket expenses, co-pays, all that crap. I never think about healthcare. Never. Unless I need it, I never think about it. So... that's kind of the best way to explain it. Dan Ryan says Xbox Series X or PS5. PS5. I'm a PS5 guy. Nothing against Xbox. I love the Halo series, but right now for Xbox Series X, is there one exclusive? I'm sure there may be, but there's not much out right now in terms of exclusives. Halo was delayed, so there's not much till that comes out. That said, if you're more into third-party games and all that stuff, that's cool. But in terms of the games that I'm going to want to play, like what Insomniac has coming out or just have out with Spider-Man, Naughty Dog, Sucker Punch, we're talking about solid developers here that are exclusive to PlayStation. Then again, Microsoft did just acquire a bunch of studios, so that can definitely change. But I think it's sort of a personal preference. So while I understand some people want one over the other, I'm just more of a PlayStation guy. Chat here. Let me see. Thomas Fillion says, what is your favorite electric guitar? I definitely don't have one. I have no friggin' idea. I have no idea. Walker Miller says, Nina Turner in Washington Post. Did you read? Yes, she had a great op-ed in the Washington Post. I did read it. It is fantastic. Nina Turner is awesome. She should potentially primary Kamala Harris. But we will see. Melinda Ortega says over 230 people have died from COVID-19 in Texas's correctional facilities. Over 80% of them were in pretrial detention and hadn't even been convicted of a crime, from Axios. Wow. And I'm sure that's a story that you could copy and paste in any other state, any other county. Yeah. There's not enough. I mean, there isn't enough investment just for everyday people, let alone, I mean, when it comes to those that are incarcerated, just there's a complete ignorance and rejection of any sort of humanity. Okay. It's 5:00 now. Grab a couple more chats as I lose my voice and get out of here. Nima Gorgon says, love the hair. Thank you. Victoria B says, also in Ontario, I do worry about healthcare because my allergy meds are effing expensive. And the physio I've had to get over the years has not been cheap. Yeah, there's massive gaps in our healthcare, 100%. So like, I always try to change my message depending on who I'm talking to. If it's a video on Canadians or Canadian healthcare for Canadians, then I'm going to be a lot more critical of our system and the massive gaps within it. If I'm talking to Americans, then that video is going to be more geared towards their ears and trying to compare, the U.S. to other countries around the world and how clearly, other countries are way ahead of where Americans are. So yeah, I always have to be careful about how I phrase any kind of argument around healthcare, because our healthcare system in Canada definitely not perfect. But the issue with our healthcare system isn't that it's single payer; it's that it doesn't cover enough. So the issues with our healthcare system isn't solved by privatization; it's actually solved by covering more under our healthcare system that is not currently covered. All right. Do you speak any foreign languages? No, I wish I did. When I was younger, I'm told this because I don't remember at all, but when I was younger, I could speak Portuguese. That's because I spent a lot of time with my grandparents as a kid, as both my parents worked. So apparently, when I was like 5 years old, I could speak Portuguese, and I don't remember any of it. I wonder sometimes if I could go into hypnosis, if they could like unlock that part of my brain, and I could learn how to speak at least 5-year-old Portuguese again. Maybe I could bring it back. But I would love to be able to speak another language, like be it French, Spanish, Portuguese. It would be awesome. But it's so tough. I tried to learn a little Spanish before I went to Peru a few years ago. In one ear, out the other. I retain basically nothing. No, I can't even speak French. As most Canadians, I don't think can, unless you're in Quebec or in the Maritimes. But yeah. All right, I have to run some errands, unfortunately. I'm part Portuguese, yes. All right. Time to go. Thank you all for showing up. This has been fun. As I said, I would like to get on Twitch a little more. I just got to find the time. But apart from that, make sure you hit the sub button, hit subscribe, hit the like button. And if you want to join, support the show, rationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page. Link is also below the video in the description box. Or just join on YouTube. You can do that as well. Many ways to help support the show. Thank you so much for showing up. And I will see you next week. Goodbye.